Whoa! Now, I know this video is late, but that doesn't mean you can just show up in my bathroom and expect a review to magically happen. These things take time. And yeah, I know my hair is long. Make all the jokes you want, I've heard them all a billion times already. Still, I get it, this video is overdue. But if we want to do this the proper way, we're gonna need to go to the ultimate gamer backdrop. Come on. So I feel the best way to start this review out is with a simple question. Have you ever played oh god damn it, I'm too tall to fit in the shot. Seriously, I have to just like hunch over like this just to be in the same frame as the entire gamer shelf. And if I have to do that for a whole video, my back and legs are going to feel like hell later. I guess we just need to settle for the next best thing. In my many years on this site, I've learned that all gaming YouTubers either need a shelf or a couch. That's just how this works. But enough padding the video with meta jokes, I should probably get back to my initial question. Have you ever played a PS3 game?
This would typically be the part of the video where I devote at least a minute to explaining the history of the franchise before talking about the game that I'm reviewing. But, surprisingly enough, I wasn't really even familiar with Sakura Wars until this year. Crazy, right? My know-it-all ass not knowing something. I knew that they were steampunk, strategy, visual novel-ish games with giant robots, but that's honestly about it. According to Wikipedia, cross-genre is often used to describe just about every entry. And Shin Sakura Taisen, also known as just Sakura Wars in the West, is no exception. It's a soft reboot that requires no knowledge of the series to get into, but has some references for longtime fans. I mean, I wasn't able to pick up on these references myself, but longtime fans told me they exist. If you'd like to learn more about the history of the series,
Honestly, just Google it. There's plenty of passionate fans out there that would do a much better job explaining all this stuff than I ever could.
this video is for newcomers, by a newcomer. I'm going to go over what I like, what I don't, and if I think that Sakura Wars, at the end of the day, is worth your time and money. Sakura Wars takes place in an alternate history of 1940 and stars Seijiro Kamiyama, who's recruited to be the captain of Tokyo's Flower Division. They operate out of the Grand Imperial Theater in secret, the cast working as stage performers to the public. Unfortunately, it isn't very long before Seijiro learns that they're practically the laughingstock of Japan.
Oh my god.
With their reputation, morale, and budget at an all-time low, Seijiro has to bring everyone together, fend off the new demon invasion of Tokyo, and, obviously, find love along the way. In simple terms, Sakura Wars is a 3D story-driven action game dating sim, but it's a lot more than just that. One reason I was immediately drawn to this game is that it's essentially a 3D visual novel. And I don't just mean a visual novel with 3D models. It actually has the pacing and progression system that you would see in a visual novel dating sim, just designed to look like a modern 3D action RPG. The game is broken up into chapters, each playing out like an episode of an anime. These are generally split between exploring your base and some of the surrounding areas, and then end with crazy mecha hack and slash action. During your time at the Grand Imperial Theater, there will be main events, sub-events, and activities taking place at various times of the day. It's during these moments that you're able to take time to appreciate the game's aesthetic. And one particular part of it might have already stood out to you if you were an anime fan in the early 2000s. Or a manga fan if you like to read stinky books. That's right, the lead artist for Sakura Wars is none other than Tite Kubo, best known for creating a very popular series that peaked far too early. I've always held an appreciation for his art whenever he's given the proper time, budget, and freedom. And I'm sorry, is that a Suejima character? As in Persona Suejima, mixed in between the Kubo characters? Is this the most artistically brilliant game ever made? No, but the visuals are great, and Kubo's style looks so much better in 3D than I expected. And you can thank the Hedgehog engine for just that. No, you didn't mishear anything. That Hedgehog engine. Crazy, right? The environments, character models, and mechs look stellar. And don't you worry, we're gonna get to the mechs real soon. The Grand Imperial Theater is gorgeous to explore and serves as a great hub for your adventures. And in modern RPG fashion, there's even an overly complicated card game that's impossible to win unless you have a master's in big brainer. What? How? Sakura, how did you lose to me? I don't even know what I'm doing! Only the main events are required to advance the story, but I think it was a nice touch to allow players to view every sub-event currently available. In many of these games, you're restricted to only doing a few of them, but Sakura Wars gives you no such restriction. Which is great, because I love the characters a lot. They're overflowing with personality and take their archetypes to the extreme, which makes each of them serve as unique romance options. Except you. Get out. The game has this laid-back vibe when it comes to how the chapters are paced that I really appreciate. They only take a couple hours to complete, but there's a lot of replayability. This mainly comes from our favorite VN staple, dialogue choices.
With a twist.
In most dating sims and VNs, time itself screeches to a halt when it comes to making decisions. But Sakura Wars switches things up enough to make things more immersive. The lip system, I see what you did there, takes these segments and adds a timer to them, preventing players from being able to overthink how to respond to the questions the characters ask Sejiro. Sakura Wars didn't invent this wheel, but I think rolling with it was the right choice. Like with all dating sims, the meta is to respond to the characters in the way that would make them the happiest, bringing up that character's affection towards the main character. But the designers anticipated this. The correct dialogue choice is often unpredictable, and while that might seem frustrating to players, it's another little touch that adds a lot to the game's immersion. Like in real life, sometimes the right thing to say to someone isn't what's obvious, and sometimes the best thing to say is nothing at all. And the uncertainty it presents and how you communicate with your friends is a good thing. During crucial story or character moments, you even get to choose the intensity of how you want to say something, which is essentially just a dialogue choice in itself, but it adds another layer in how the system seems so real. During the intermissions, the player is able to see how close Sejiro is to each of the romantic leads, and at a certain point in the story, it'll lock you into a specific character's route depending on which one is closest to him. The lip system makes you feel like your choices have a tangible effect on your interpersonal relationships. And to cement this, when the game first came out, you couldn't even save your progress whenever you wanted to. Your choices were permanent. Although a day one patch in the Western version added a ton of quality of life improvements like saving anywhere, so now you're just given complete freedom to save scum to your heart's content. No judgment on my part though, it makes replays a lot easier. This system is not without more objective issues, but they mainly come from problems with the game as a whole. The voice acting sounds stellar, but during many of these side events, the game remains unvoiced. This isn't inherently an issue since many RPGs don't have the budget to provide full voice acting. But the way Sakura Wars handles this leaves a lot to be desired. I imagine that in order to better suit the whole playing an anime thing, they had all the dialogue progress automatically. You can skip a line with a press of a button, but the game's dialogue never stops and waits for you. If you're a slow reader, this will already be a problem, but the issue I have is that this applies to every single scene in the game. Optional scenes with no voice acting not only have no way to manually progress the dialogue at the player's own pace, but it seems the developers put the time into mouth animations for those scenes as well. You know, the ones without voice acting. It really kills the pacing for what would be charming character building events, and is one of the only noticeable oversights. This might not bother everyone, but it's a recurring issue that never went away. Choices are an important part about Sakura Wars, and I'd argue that every single mechanic revolves around them in some way or another. How you choose to spend your time and how thorough you are in exploring your environments might not influence too much in the grand scheme of things, but as someone who has spent the last couple months depression binging Dragon Quest games enough to have developed an obsessive collectathon mentality, at least I appreciated it. Bromides are the game's main collectible, being pictures of characters from this game and past ones. They're all obtainable during very specific time windows, requiring you to go out of your way to find them all if you so wish. Replays are encouraged because you can't get every bromide in a single playthrough, with some being locked behind side events where you need to choose between two of the female leads to increase your relationship with whoever you pick. Another important mechanic in strengthening your bonds with the flower division is teat-a-teat. Or is it tete-a-tete? Tit-a-tit? I don't know. I feel like I, don't need to say too much about this. It kind of speaks for itself.
恋人同士みたいです。
どうしさいや恋人になっちゃうかさくら。
もう冗談ばっかり。そんなのまだ早いです。
Jesus Christ, sister, you ain't kidding. Honestly, these aren't that bad and you can skip them if you wish. I've seen worse in other games, but these can certainly be a bit awkward. Okay, I can hear your cries. Cullen, you've spent enough time talking about the life sim stuff. You promised us mecha. Now give us the mecha. Like the rest of the game, the action segments aren't groundbreaking in any way, but does that make them any less fun to play? Nope. If you've been following my channel for a while, you might already know that I'm not the best when it comes to describing why action mechanics work in a game. According to the glorious powers of Google, I know that this is the first time the series has ever attempted being an action RPG, and I think it does a decent job when taking that into consideration. It's flashy, really fun in small bursts, and simple to get into. Basically a microcosm for the game as a whole. The mechs are also so well designed that there's even official Gunpla model kits made for them, which is super neat. $50? Jesus, what kind of financially irresponsible idiot would even bother?
What? Did I forget to mention I used to collect Gundam model kits?
This is not a deep combat system, but that doesn't necessarily make it a bad one. At least in the state it's in now, because before the international release you couldn't even lock on to enemies. It's not anything special, but it looks pretty. You plow through enemies with no thought at all while exciting music plays and characters talk about the power of bonds and friendship. And while you might think that sounds bland and cliche, I really enjoyed it. Every character has a subtly unique playstyle that fits their personality and mech design, which is something I appreciate in any action game. It's repetitive and doesn't offer any substantial challenges for most of your time playing it, but it's inoffensive.
You know, when you've been playing games for as long as I have, eventually you stop expecting everyone you play to be a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. And you learn to appreciate the smaller games, the more flawed ones, the ones with a lot of heart put into them.
Sakura Wars is simple. It doesn't challenge conventions with its story or gameplay, it can be a bit janky in its execution, but is full of hopeful messages that couldn't help me from grinning like an absolute idiot most of the time I played it. Its positive tone is infectious, helping craft a flawed gem that I recommend giving a shot. It's a breath of fresh air despite not really being that innovative in its game design or writing, and it weirdly made me feel nostalgic. Even though I've never played a Sakura Wars game before this one, it feels like a long-lost PS3 era JRPG you'd find on a shelf at GameStop and decided to give it a shot on a whim.
I thought I was talking out of my ass at the beginning of the video, didn't you? No, I've never talked out my ass a single day in my entire life.
It didn't blow you away, the visuals weren't top of the line, and the animation could even be stiff at points, but you just couldn't help being engrossed because it was obviously made by a group of passionate people. I miss that feeling of being an eager teenager whose taste was constantly forming and changing, looking for weird RPGs on his PS3. The way Sakura Wars handles its themes feels right out of a simpler era of game design, and I love that about it.
And very much like this high grade, while all the parts that make up it aren't anything special, the end result looks nice and it holds up surprisingly well. And honestly, do we need anything more than that?
Cullen here, and I hope you enjoyed this rather experimental video. At least to me. You've probably seen a bunch other like it, but this one was special to me, so shut up. Big thanks to Sega for providing me with a review copy of this game, and extra thanks to them for being patient while I worked on this during, you know, the world catching on fire. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Ta-ta!